Meeting. We are a commission appointed by the mayor and city council to plan for the orderly growth and development of the community, to hold public hearings, and to make recommendations to the city council on planning items. Please note that the city council rules state that the public hearings for planning cases shall be conducted solely by the planning commission. No additional public hearings will be conducted by the city council. Tonight's cases are tentatively scheduled to be heard by the City Council next month. Agendas can be found at topeka.org. Many of tonight's cases involve public hearings. For those cases, the procedure will be as follows. First, the Planning Department staff will summarize the case. Next, we will hear from the applicant or their representative. Then we will receive public testimony. Public comments should be addressed solely to the chair and are limited to 4 minutes. Chris, take roll, please.
Mr. Armstrong?
Here.
Ms. Messina?
Here.
Ms. Cavazos?
Here.
Mr. Gales?
Here.
Mr. Hall?
Here.
Ms. Jordan?
Here.
Mr. Kanar is absent. Ms. Ringler?
Here.
And Mr. Woods is absent. We have 7 and a quorum.
Thank you. First, we need to approve the minutes from May 15th of 2017.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Great. All right. We need to approve the minutes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Ms. Messina?
Aye.
Ms. Cavazos?
Aye.
Mr. Gales?
Aye.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Ms. Ringler?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right. Do we have any communications to the commission, Mr. Fyander?
Vice Chair Cavazos, first of all, thank you for stepping in tonight on short notice. Really appreciate it, and I know your fellow commissioners will help you out at any beck and call, so as will staff. The only things we wanted to communicate is some of the handouts, just to make sure you all have them in front of you. There was 3 handouts here before you got here tonight. There's 2 regarding the first agenda item on the jingle item. There's a letter of support as well as some background on the East Topeka Learning Center. So those 2 items, and then there's a 3rd item, a memorandum from myself. This replaces the information in your packet on, and this for the last item, E2A, on the consistency finding for Wheatfield Village project plan. So we'll use this tonight when we get to that item. Really disregard what's in your packet, and we'll go over it at that point. So I think that's all we have.
Great.
So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any declaration of conflict of interest or ex parte communications?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have a conflict with item E1A.
Mr.
Madam
Armstrong?
Chair, I also have a conflict with item E1A.
Okay. All right. So at this time, we would like to move on to our public hearings and action items. So moving on to 1A.
And Madam Chair, while they're waiting to leave, while we're waiting for them to leave, just want to let everybody know that the voting requirements are just a majority of those that are still left.
Okay.
And that are present. So in case there's any questions as we go through this. Okay. So that would be at least 3 votes to pass.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much. So Joint Economic Development Organization of Topeka and Shining County, Mr. I will mess up your name even though I've practiced it a million times. Noonball?
Very close. Very close. Nunaville.
Nunaville. Thank
Yes,
you.
It's a difficult name. Yes, Commissioners, good evening. Case Z1702 is a request in zoning reclassification from R1 Single Family Dwelling District to O and I2 Office and Institutional District for a 6.06 acre site located at 2014 Southeast Washington Street. Actually, it fronts onto 21st Street between Washington and Indiana. The change in zoning to OI 1 and 2 will accommodate the renovation and reuse of existing buildings formerly utilized as a National Guard armory for use as the East Topeka Learning Center that, in conjunction with Washburn University and Washburn Institute of Technology, will provide educational and career programs in support of workforce development. The existing buildings comprising the former National Guard Armory were constructed during the 1950s. In regard to zoning and surrounding properties, the adjacent zoning districts are residential R1 and R2, with to the north includes the Antioch Family Life Center, a social services agency, and adjacent and south across 21st Street includes a single-family residences and one duplex residence, while a city-owned parking lot is actually located adjacent and east across Indiana Avenue. But again, the primary land uses are definitely residential. Pursuant to the city zoning code, the purpose of the proposed O&I2 zoning district is to provide for a limited range of non-residential and non-commercial uses, such as general purpose office, professional, or administrative operations. The district shall not permit those uses and activities pertaining to retail product display, installation, service, repair, or maintenance. A relatively narrow range of land uses are permitted within the O and I2 district. Permitted uses include assisted living facility, medical care facility, private club or lodge, governmental services, outdoor recreation, religious assembly, banks, and office and professional uses. In regard to required off-street parking, in the O and I2 district, off-street parking is required. Of course, the off-street parking requirement for businesses and vocational schools is one space per 200 square feet of floor area. In the O and I2 district, there are landscaping requirements for new construction of buildings and parking lot expansions. Landscaping requirements will be reviewed as a part of future development process. There are no explicit design standards applicable with the O and I2 district, aside from site plan review, and again, landscaping requirements as may apply. Regard to conformance to the request to the comprehensive plan, the Topeka Land Use and Growth Management Plan encourages infill and redevelopment within Topeka to take advantage of existing urban infrastructure and services, and that promote a range of uses to fit the overall character of the area. The subject property is also included within the Central Highland Park Neighborhood Plan and is categorized as institutional within that neighborhood plan. The subject area is further addressed within the neighborhood plan and identified as the former Armory building by indicating that building should be adaptively reused for community-wide uses. The site is served by City of Topeka Water and Sewer. The extent of any needed improvements to infrastructure will continue to be assessed during, again, subsequent steps in the development process. Regarding transportation traffic impacts, 21st Street is categorized as a minor arterial within the area, while Indiana Avenue and Washington Street are categorized as major collectors. Regarding the anticipated use as a vocational school, it is anticipated that approximately 400 full and part-time students are expected to attend various classes throughout the year. Class schedules generally begin at 8 a.m. and will end at 3 p.m. The owner applicant estimates that 50% will ride Topeka Metro buses, 10% will walk, and 40% will either drive or be dropped off via private vehicles. The owner applicant did conduct a neighborhood information meeting as required on June 28th. Meeting attendance and summary is attached in the staff report. 7 people attended the meeting. And the response to the presentation was generally positive, although there was concern expressed regarding traffic and potential for other uses allowed within the proposed O and I2 zoning district. The criteria under which change in requested zoning is assessed, also called the golden factors, is outlined within your staff report. Among the primary indicators that staff believe are quite supportive, in particular of the request, has to do with character of the neighborhood. The proposed O and I2 zoning is compatible with the existing and desired future character of the neighborhood, in that the area being characterized by primarily residential development is compatible with the primarily office and institutional uses allowed within the proposed district. Length of time, the property has remained vacant as zoned or used for its current use. The buildings located on the subject site, previously utilized as National Guard Armory, have been vacant for approximately 15 years. And another primary factor, again, and particularly in support, as I described previously, would be the conformance to the comprehensive plan as well as the Highland Park neighborhood plan. Based on the findings and analysis within the staff report, planning staff do recommend approval of the zoning reclassification from R1 single-family dwelling district to O&I2 office and institutional as proposed. And this concludes staff's presentation. And staff's available, of course, to answer questions you may have.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions at this time for staff? All right. Is the applicant present?
Good evening, Commissioners. Angela Sharp with Bartlett & West, representing the owner. And John did a nice job of explaining the case to you, the fact that this is the first step in the process of a project that we're really excited about for our community. And one of the handouts that Mr. Flander mentioned was this sheet that gives you some frequently asked questions and just kind of some bullet points about the project, would be in the East Topeka Learning Center. And Glenda Du Bois is in the audience with me tonight. She is the co-chair of the committee that's tasked with bringing this project about. So she's done a fabulous job in doing that. One of the things that John mentioned and that we all know is that this particular first step in the process, the rezoning of the property, isn't specific to the actual proposed use that we currently have, but to the overall long-term use of the property. But given the fact that the entities involved in this project, being Go Topeka, Washburn University, and Washburn Institute of Technology, have such a history in our community of bringing positive things that are long-lived, we feel that this project is the long-term use for this redevelopment of the property in this neighborhood. And in addition to that, as we move forward, hopefully after getting approval for the first step, the zoning, as we go through the design process, we'll look to make sure that all of the physical aspects of the project, being the traffic analysis, the lighting, the noise, all of those issues that have to do with the actual site that will impact the neighborhood, will be addressed in as positive a manner as we are looking that the programming within the facility will help the neighborhood and our community as a whole. And we're just really excited about the project, and with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, does anyone have any questions? No? In the letter that we received tonight from Ms. Mary Cope, she had addressed concern or was hoping that the building would be open in case of tornadoes. At one time, the building had been opened for the residents there. A lot of the residents don't have basements, so that was, we just received this information today. I don't know if that has been discussed.
Not to my knowledge, but definitely that was one of the things we talked about in the neighborhood meeting, was that we are looking to initiate conversations with all of the neighbors to find out if there are things like that they would be interested in, that hopefully we can address during the design process. So I'm sure that's something we'll take a look at and see if they're able to facilitate that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we would open it up for any public comments. Okay. Not seeing anyone coming up from the public to address the commission. We will close the public hearing, and commissioners, we are open for any further discussion or questions.
Madam Chairwoman, I have a question for staff. Just for clarification, under the transportation and traffic, staff indicated that they didn't see any issues with the traffic because the minor arterial. The assumption is that even on its busiest moments, high intense, is that road is adequately sized and close enough proximity to north-south arterials that it's not going to be an issue without any stoplights or anything. I think that was the interpretation I heard, is that it's really a nominal impact.
Yes, Commissioner, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I apologize if I missed this. The timeline on the completion of the project?
I think that is somewhat open-ended at this point,
Okay.
is my understanding. Yeah, I have not heard a firm timeline.
Any other questions? Discussion? I'd like to say that I think it's a great opportunity, since the building has been vacant for the last 15 years. I think this will really improve the neighborhood. So I'm excited to see where this is going to go. So, well, if we would like to entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. And we just need a majority, is that correct?
That's correct.
Awesome.
And just pause to see if there's any discussion before the vote, and we can move.
Okay. Any discussion?
I'm in favor.
All right. Chris?
Yep.
If you would please take the vote. Thank you.
Mr. Armstrong abstains. Ms. Messina?
Aye.
Ms. Cavazos?
Aye.
Mr. Gales?
Aye.
Mr. Hobbs abstains. Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Ms. Ringler?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0 with 2 abstaining.
All right. I think Mr. Finder's getting our 2 absent commissioners. We will move on to item 1B, PUD 1702.
Yeah. Madam Chair, I just wanted to, before Mr. Neunenbell gets going on his staff report and presentation, just let you know we do have a lot of people to help answer any questions, in particular from the applicant's side as well as city side. We do have our respective traffic specialists here tonight. So if we don't get into too much, if you get into too much detail at this level, we do have others that can help, just to let you know.
Thank you. All right.
Yes, Commissioners, case PUD 1702 comprises Wheatfield Village Planned Unit Development Master Plan, request and rezoning of 14.7-acre site located northwest corner of the intersection of Southwest 29th Street and Southwest Fairlawn Road from C4 Commercial District to PUD Planned Unit Development to provide for redesign and reuse of commercial center along with new residential development. Proposed PUD stipulates use groups of C4 comprising a restaurant, a hotel, a theater, and M3 multiple family dwellings provided for 178 apartments. The proposed PUD with mixed-use groups of C4 restaurant, family dining restaurant, fast food, 2 restaurants within a single building, hotel, theater, and multiple family dwellings will comprise a designated redevelopment project area with associated redevelopment project plan approved and adopted by the City of Topeka that is consistent with the proposed PUD. Existing site includes vacant land and primarily vacant structures. Commercial development on the site occurred in a piecemeal manner, including construction of a bowling alley in 1960, auto service station in 63, and hotel in 1968. All of these structures having been demolished with only their foundation pads still visible. In regards to zoning and character of surrounding area, adjacent areas to the south, east, and west along 28th Street, 29th Street, and Fair Lawn Avenue include commercial zoning and uses, with nearby residential development being located to the north on the opposite side of Shunganunga Creek, with Crestview Park being located north of 28th Street, just east of Fair Lawn Avenue. All utilities will be underground within and on the site with existing sanitary sewer and water service provided by the City of Topeka. The PUD master plan does provide for internal circulation of vehicles and pedestrians. A segment of the Shunga multi-use trail was recently completed adjacent to the project area and will provide direct access to the development at various points. A traffic impact study has recently been approved by the city for the project. In regard to circulation, there are 3 access points being proposed in servicing the new development. There will be 2 new driveways along Fair Lawn Road, with one of these being a full-access signalized driveway aligning with 28th Street. The other driveway onto Fair Lawn will be located 200 feet south of 28th Street and would be limited to right turn movements only. A potential third access into the development will be located off the I-470 westbound entrance ramp just north of 29th Street and will accommodate one-way traffic only. This potential third access will require a break-in access on the I-470 entrance ramp, which is presently being considered for approval by the Kansas Department of Transportation and the Federal Highway Administration. Should the break-in access onto the I-470 entrance ramp not be approved by either agency, the proposed PUD master plan is notated to provide for administrative processing of a minor amendment in eliminating that entrance ramp access. The traffic impact study does provide detailed analysis of improvements to the area roadway system for 3 access points as well as 2 access points. Regardless of which access scenario occurs, all necessary roadway improvements must be completed prior to occupancy of any new structure within each of 2 phases of development. For example, Phase 1 development is anticipated to include the movie theater and 2-tenant restaurant with drive-through. Roadway improvements for this phase will not include any improvements to 29th Street. However, to Fair Lawn Road, there will be required a new traffic signal installation and construction of northbound turn lane at 28th Street, construction of second southbound turn lane on Fair Lawn at 29th. The traffic impact study also has identified the need to construct the raised median on Fair Lawn between 28th and 29th Street. However, upon further analysis, city staff have concluded that this can be modified so that the median is not extended that full distance, thus not affecting adversely access onto an existing business located on the east side of Fair Lawn. In regard to Phase 2 roadway system improvements, Phase 2 would consist of Phase 1 development, of course, plus the apartments, hotel, and sit-down restaurant. These improvements to Phase 2 would be confined to 29th Street, since the Fairlawn Road improvements, as required, would have been completed in Phase 1. So, and this is broken down further, these needed improvements, as to whether the I-470 ramp entryway is approved by KDOT or not. If the third access is approved off the I-470 ramp, 29th Street improvements will include widening 29th Street to extend eastbound left turn lane at I-470 ramp connection road intersection. While if it is not approved, widening the improvements to 29th Street will consist of widening 29th Street to provide a second eastbound turn lane, left turn lane, and additional left turn storage at the intersection of 29th and Fairlawn. The proposed development, as I briefly described, includes 5 buildings. Building 1, a 4-story, 88-room hotel, be located northeast at the northeast section of the site, approximately 134,000 square feet. Building 2, a 4-story, 178-unit apartment complex with parking garage in the northwest corner of the site, approximately 201,000 square feet total. Building 3, a 9-room, 691-seat movie theater in the south central portion of the site, approximately 34,000 square feet. Building 4, family dining restaurant at the southeast corner of the site, approximately 7,300 square feet. Building 5, fast food restaurant with 2 tenants, possibly operating a drive-through window, one of those restaurants, at east end of the site, 5,100 square feet. In addition, there's also anticipated to be a farmer's market open space area at the southeast corner of the site, approximately 600 square feet in size. The PUD master plan, as proposed, does include extensive notes providing increased certainty as to the scale, quality, and design character of the buildings. The design controls provided by these notes apply to all buildings. Staff is of the understanding that although the residential component of the PUD is highly conceptual, staff has made a number of observations and recommendations and related conditions regarding setbacks and emergency access. In regard to on-site parking requirements, on sheet 1 of the master plan for each building, and land use calculations are provided for required parking per zoning regulations. As is indicated, the master plan actually overstates the parking required for the commercial buildings by a total of 110 spaces, while the master plan understates parking, staff believes, required for the residential land use by a total of 89 spaces. For likely, based upon what staff anticipates will be likely residential density and type on the site. If the parking demand for the residential component exceeds what is generally proposed, staff has concerns that residents will very likely use the theater parking adjacent to the residential area. Encroachment on the theater parking will be exacerbated to some extent, perhaps by the relative convenience to residents parking in the surface lot instead of in the parking garage. However, staff does recognize that overbuilding of parking spaces is also not advised in such a mixed-use shared parking setting where pedestrian scale features are a priority. For these reasons, staff do recognize that a variance to the residential parking requirements, a reduction of up to 25%, may be justified at a future time when the owner may demonstrate the ratio as being too restrictive given the characteristics of the actual residential use as proposed. In regard to signage, sign regulations applicable to the C4 zoning district are not particularly restrictive, allowing for multiple 55-foot high ground signs up to 300 square feet in copy area per sign face. Therefore, PUDs in themselves help establish, where appropriate, more restrictive but reasonable sign standards in keeping with best practices of the community. The PUD master plan is proposing an appropriate limit on wall signage For commercial uses, cumulative area of signs limited to 20% of the facade of each building. For ground signs, the signage notes in the master plan provide for up to 5 ground signs, not including small directional signs. Staff is recommending, however, more restrictive standards for the ground signs based on what is appropriate at this location and on restrictions imposed on other similar developments within the city. Signs at a height of 50 feet or more are sometimes needed for visibility from interstate highways, such as I-470. Signs at the height of 30 feet or less are appropriate for visibility from arterial streets. Again, the project has been conditioned, as proposed by staff, to, again, to add these more restrictive standards. In regard to project landscaping, the Planning Department received a current landscape plan on July 5th, which was unfortunately a bit too late to complete a detailed review prior to completion of the staff report. It is, however, attached for information and not as a recommended approved plan. Staff has made observations and recommendations staff can make observations and recommendations as the process moves forward. And as stated in the landscape plan is received, landscaping will include a mix of large trees and understory trees and shrubs along Fairlawn Road and 29th Street, both of those, as well as throughout the project area. An enriched parkway adjacent to Fairlawn Road will also include a 30-inch high contoured berm and providing enhanced screening of parking lot expanse as viewed from Fairlawn Road. Within the staff report, there was a typographical error that indicated this berm would be 30 feet high. However, it is 30 inches high. In addition to meeting the landscape requirements, it is important that landscaping also be arranged throughout the site to ensure compatibility between uses and to enhance the project's appearance at its edges. Staff is recommending additional landscaping and related features between the residential component and the entertainment and hotel uses. In regard to some other factors related to the PUD master plan, a subdivision plat is required for the project, and the applicant will be continuing in processing a plat for this subject site. The area is partially located within FEMA-designated floodplain associated with nearby Shunganuga Creek and will require processing of a permit through FEMA and ensuring that all structures are safely above the 100-year base floodplain elevation prior to development. All proposed drives and parking lots will be curbed with enclosed storm sewer lines to collect and convey drainage north to the creek. Stormwater detention for the site is proposed with the use of underground storage chambers. A stormwater management plan for the site is currently under review and will be further considered during the subdivision planning process. Project applicant did hold a neighborhood information meeting on Monday, April 24th. Questions, comments from the 16 attendees were primarily concerned with traffic impacts, specific commercial uses proposed, and site design and layout. Once again, the standard criteria for analyzing the proposed zone change, or golden factors as they're referred to, is included in the staff report. Several of these, again, that staff have identified as being very much in support. All of them have been determined to be in support of the proposal, but several that are particularly strong in terms of supporting the proposal has to do with character of neighborhood. The proposed PUD master plan provides for redevelopment of a deteriorated commercial center and will provide for new commercial and residential development that will be compatible with other commercial and residential development within the area. The length of time the property has remained vacant. The site has been underdeveloped and in a deteriorating state for several years or more. Subject property has continued to deteriorate, and the desirability of a mixed-use development coordinated with transportation improvements needed to support commercial development at this location. And then lastly, also conformance to the comprehensive plan. The Topeka Land Use and Growth Management Plan 2040 contains policies related to growth management and future land use. The plan encourages infill and redevelopment within Topeka to take advantage of existing urban infrastructure, and this project certainly does that. Based upon the findings and analysis within the report, planning staff do recommend approval of the Wheatfield Village PUD Master Plan, subject to 13 conditions delineated in the staff report. And this concludes staff's presentation, and we're certainly available to answer questions.
Thank you. Commissioners have any questions for staff? Mr. Gales.
Just for clarification, you noted in the recommendations that the variances in the requirements and the supply of parking, while adequate for the first phase, will be addressed or kind of re-reviewed at each subsequent phase, just subject to the final development of each phase. That's how it's going to be handled, since not all parking is going to be provided as part of the completed first phase. Is that my understanding?
That's correct, Commissioner Gales. Yes, and it does provide for the possibility of an administrative variance to be allowed based upon the applicant providing information to determine the appropriateness of that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Will there be any bicycle parking requirements for this project?
Yes, there will be.
And that will just show up later in the master plan?
Yes. In fact, one of the slight tweakings has to do with adding bicycle parking in the verbiage within the master plan. In fact, Commissioner Messina, yes.
I do have another question on that. Do you guys have the authority to require certain types of racks so they don't buy like the low-grade bike racks?
I'll take this.
Okay.
We have a, I don't think it's a requirement. We do have the types that are preferred in our bike parking section of the code. And it's usually the inverted U types or something similar to that. In terms of the grade quality, no, we don't. This being a PUD, we can make any sort of performance standards if you want, if you feel it's warranted.
What will be your requirement for the amount of, will it just be one rack per building, or?
Commissioner Messina, that is 5%, 5% of the total vehicle parking spaces. So if there's 100 parking spaces required, they would need 5 bike parking spaces, for instance. So there's nothing in addition. That is our base code requirement at this point. Yeah.
Okay.
Any further
Madam Chair?
questions? Yes.
Is there going to be a presentation by the applicant, or should we get into other questions that they may cover?
Sure. Commissioner Armstrong, yes, they will come up and provide augment Mr. Nunebell's presentation. There will be a more detailed, I guess, traffic simulation as well by their engineer. So if you want to hold a traffic specific, that would be great. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? All right, at this time, if the applicant would like to come forward.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen of the commission, staff, thank you for having us here tonight. Thank you, John, for the presentation. My name is Bob Johnson. I'm with the Polsinelli Law Firm. I represent the developer of the project 29 Fairlawn LLC, represented here tonight by Jim Klossman, its principal. Also, its counsel, Jennifer Sork. Other members of our team here tonight include Kevin Holland, lead engineer for Cook, Platt & Strobel, working on this project, Dave Olson with Drake Development, And Jeff Wilkie with Trans Systems, our traffic engineer, is here as well. And as staff has referenced, he'll make a synchro presentation, traffic simulation presentation for you at the end of my quick comments here. Staff did a very thorough job of explaining the development and the conditions tied thereto. Just at the outset, I want to thank staff for the work on the project. It's been a very constructive process. We agree with all the conditions in the staff report and look forward to continue working with staff on this. We think working with them has led to a better project, and it's been an excellent process, so thank you. Just to start off here, John alluded to the history of the site. I want to speak to it as well. Obviously, this is a site that has been in decline for some time. Before Jim purchased the site, really a decades-long process of deterioration. As he said, there was a bowling alley there, a movie theater there. Those are just foundations now. Those have been demolished. Really what's there today is several one-story multi-tenant buildings that are mainly vacant. These buildings are not in good shape. They're continually deteriorating right now. As a result, we want to demolish those buildings and build all new development as part of the Wheatfield Village concept. These are pictures of the current site. Obviously, they speak for themselves as to the current condition. As John said, the site is located at the northwest quadrant of Fairlawn Road and 29th Street, along what is obviously a highly visible corridor within the city, along the I-470 corridor there. Because of this location, and because of its importance to the city, and because of its importance from a commercial aspect to driving traffic to city businesses, increasing city sales taxes, et cetera, that is why Jim identified this site as the ideal site for bringing a modern mixed-use project to Topeka. Here is an overview conceptual site plan of that project. Again, this is a conceptual plan reflecting what you have in front of you as the actual plan that will be approved or considered rather as part of the PUD. John did walk through the uses, but I'd like to add a little bit of specificity with regard to each one. I'm not sure if I can point to them, but probably doesn't matter here. I think I can describe their location. So starting in the northwest corner of the site, obviously this here is our multifamily residential dwelling. This is the kind of the modern style. It's a wrap style multifamily building. So what that means, obviously, I'm sure you are very aware, it's wrapped buildings around a structured parking garage. John spoke to parking. We understand completely that that is a puzzle to solve with regard to this site. The structured parking is a huge component of solving that puzzle. We will work with staff in putting together a parking plan to make sure this site parks. Obviously, Jim is not going to build a site. Our tenants are not going to come to a site that doesn't park. It's just something that's a non-starter to begin with. We know that. We don't want that. Obviously, staff doesn't want that. So that will be an issue that will be solved moving forward. And we're confident that showing a parking study in discussion with our tenants, we will be able to park this site as currently laid out. Moving to the east here, we have the multi-story hotel. This is the other anchor of the project. As you can see, the central promenade moves north right into the hotel. As with all of the components of the project, the appearance of the project, the quality of the project, the quality of each building is going to be high. It's going to be a really nice looking project, to put it mildly. The hotel is no exception, and that will be a central feature as people drive into the site from the southern access point and from the 28th and Fairlawn access point. The remaining three uses, really the fourth there with the farmer's market, are highly complementary of the two anchors. Probably for obvious reasons, but just quickly walk through them. First, the two paths to the east. We have the one on the north, which is the multi-tenant building. We are proposing two tenants there. The first tenant will be a coffee shop used with a drive-through. The other tenant will be a fast casual restaurant with a sit-down component. The restaurant to the south is a sit-down restaurant, as John alluded to. It'll be the kind of place where people want to take their families to eat. It'll be the kind of place that people will want to go with their coworkers to watch a Royals game. Maybe they'll be staying at the hotel with the coworker on a business trip to Topeka. That's probably where they'll go. The fast casual restaurant, similar type concept, a family type restaurant that we think will not only be visited by people that are staying at the hotel, certainly our residents, but people in the larger community. We think both of these places will be gathering spots for people that live in the general area and work in the general area. Obviously, the farmers market is the complementary piece to that as well. We think that's, in particular, something our residents will enjoy and something that the surrounding neighborhood will enjoy. The use in the site moving, or in the center of the site moving west, we thought long and hard about what to do here, and we landed on what we thought is a perfect use, the 9-screen first-run movie theater. Obviously, our residents will, we think, highly patronize that use, the hotel guests as well. And then, of course, we'll have people coming over from the restaurants after dinner, for an evening combination of eating dinner and going to a movie. Kind of the classic approach there we think we are bringing to this site. So, in short, this, as you would expect, has been a long thought-through, symbiotic process of making all of these uses work together. This is, as I said, the modern mixed-use concept. It's what Topeka, we think, needs. It's what the surrounding neighborhood needs. It is the concept where you're not just bringing one type of use, in a traditional sense, but really something where everybody's going to stay at the site and patronize multiple different buildings. Here is a conceptual, more 3D layout of the site plan here. You again can see the apartments in the northwest corner with the parking garage tucked back, wrapped, their buildings wrapped around that garage, the multi-story hotel, the restaurants fronting Fairlawn with the farmers market, and then the theater. I do want to point out the 3 access points on this view here. You have the access point on Fairlawn and 28th that will be the fully signalized intersection. You have the one to the south that is the right in, right out only. And then you have the access point to the south that is tied to the break-in access request. Last thing I want to point out on this slide is the Shunga Trail. We will dedicate, as part of this project, land for a connection of the Shunga Trail along the northern boundary of our site. We think this is a benefit to the general public to be able to traverse and connect to those 2 pieces of the Shunga Trail along our site. Also for our residents and people staying at the hotel, we think we'll use that to go for a run in the morning or go for a bike ride in the evening or whatever they might enjoy recreationally along the Shunga Trail. So speaking to that break-in access request and filling in a little bit more about the traffic improvements and what those will be specifically. There are 3 scenarios that I want to highlight for you here. The first one would be the improvements that will be required in the event we get a break-in access approval. The second will be the improvements that will be required in the circumstance where we get denied for a break-in access request. And then thirdly, I want to point out what improvements are tied to phase 1 of the project. And then, of course, naturally what will flow in phase 2 after that. I want to pause here and point out that we've retained whom I believe is truly the best traffic engineer in the business, Trans Systems, and Jeff Wilkie in particular. And he's been working extensively with your excellent professional traffic staff, Terry Coder, to produce an exhaustive traffic study that has really analyzed this issue from all angles. And they have agreed upon a study that shows that every intersection and every movement study under all of these scenarios, each of these scenarios meets an acceptable level of service. I think that's a critical thing to remember. It's something that through all phases will be met, and in each scenario, regardless if we get the break or don't get the break, we will produce acceptable levels of service at these intersections and in these movements for all the traffic that is produced by the Wheatfield Village site. So first scenario here, you're looking at the improvements with the break-in access. Now, in either case, with the break-in access approval or the break-in access denial, the Fairlawn improvements will be the same. What changes is the 29th Street improvements. So starting with the Fairlawn improvements at the very north part here, we will construct a fully signalized intersection at 28th and Fairlawn. Just north of that, we will retain the existing southbound turn lane. We will add a dedicated northbound turn lane at 28th and Fairlawn, construct the raised median that John spoke to a minute ago, leaving the break in the access there to the south of that median to the existing access for the pad site on the east side of Fairlawn. And then moving south, we will construct an additional left-bound turn lane at 29th and Fairlawn to service the traffic that will be leaving our site and taking that movement left eastbound onto 29th Street. The 29th Street improvements in the break and access scenario include, as John explained, and you can see here, the increase of the capacity of that left turn lane onto the I-470 westbound turn ramp and into our site. That's because we anticipate that more people will be traveling from the east along Fairlawn and want to enter our site through the break-in access entrance there. That is an entrance only, by the way, in case you're wondering about that. It's inbound only on that southern access point. And so we need to expand the capacity for that turn lane so that cars can stack in there and clear out within an acceptable period of time. Moving to the improvements without the break-in access, again, the Fairlawn improvements are the same, so I won't run through those. But moving to the 29th Street improvements, because traffic will not be able to flow into our site through the third access point to the south in case we are denied the break-in access, we need to construct a second left-bound turn lane along 29th Street moving into Fairlawn, excuse me, and that will require additional storage west of the I-470 connector road and 29th Street intersection to allow for that traffic to queue there as it's looking to turn left onto Fairlawn. This shows, as John said, phase one of the site, which will be the movie theater construction and construction of the fast casual restaurant pad along Fairlawn. Really, this illustrates what I've already explained here, which are the improvements along Fairlawn. Those will be constructed with phase one. Phase two will be the remaining buildings, and those will be tied to construction of the 29th Street improvements, meaning we will not receive a certificate of occupancy for any of our buildings in phase two until 29th Street improvements are completed. Same with the phase one buildings. We will not obtain a certificate of occupancy for those buildings until the Fairlawn improvements are completed. We agree to this stipulation. We think it makes sense. We understand it, and we think that obviously the traffic study bears out that phasing the improvements in this manner creates acceptable levels of service at each of the intersections and at each of the movements. So at this time, I'd invite Jeff Wilkie from Trans-Systems to provide his traffic simulation. If you're more tech savvy than me, maybe you'll be able to get it up. But
very good. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. Jeff Wilkie, Trans-Systems, 2400 Pershing, Kansas City, Missouri. Excuse me. Apologize for the noise there. This is a silent recording. This is our traffic simulation from our analysis modeling. This simulation is showing the existing plus development conditions. This is full development of the site. This is looking at your 3 different access points, of course, 28th Street, then the right-in, right-out access point just south of that on Fairlawn. And also this includes the south driveway off the ramp to westbound I-470. So in this illustration, this is showing all of the improvements that Mr. Johnson described on Fairlawn and along 29th Street for the conditions with the break-in access. So this shows how we model closely spaced intersections. This is a lot of the reason for the simulation. We don't want to look at intersections on an isolated basis, given the tight location of these adjacent signals. The next simulation here.
Do you have a question?
I did. Sorry to interrupt, and maybe you'll address this. Does your simulation take into account like a scenario where the movie theater dumps out everybody at once, several hundred people, and the cars, it has like an example of what that impact is, like a once a day, 200 or 300 cars at once impact? Have you run that exercise?
What we ran is we looked at, we collected all the counts from the AM and the PM peak hour. We found the peak hour at each individual intersection and took the worst peak hour at each intersection, used that in our model. So what we're simulating is PM peak is what you're seeing here. So that was more around the commuter peak is what we were looking at, not so much when a typical movie large release might be, which is usually later in the evening. What we found is typically the biggest impacts to the street network are during that commuter peak. So a large exit out of the theater might have a pretty large impact on the site, not as much off-site. So that's how we would look at that. And what we used is numbers from the ITE trip generation manual. And so those are based on a lot of data collection gathered from all over the country for these land uses. And so these are the agreed upon rates. They're the industry standard, if you will. So in that movie theater, time corresponds more with that PM peak hour. So that would be what it is. So
Thank you.
the next scenario we're showing you here is this is existing plus full development, again, without the break-in access. So you see just 2 access points on this simulation. We're looking at 28th Street and Fairlawn, the signal, of course, and then the right-in, right-out driveway just south of there on Fairlawn. So this scenario includes those same Fairlawn improvements, plus the 29th Street improvements, which are different for this scenario. You see there's dual eastbound left turn lanes from 29th Street to head north onto Fairlawn. That's the biggest change in that area. Show some of the queue interactions there. Most of the queue interaction we found was more the 29th and Fairlawn area. Some minor queuing at 28th and Fairlawn, but those were generally minor, as you can see. And then the last scenario I have tonight to show, this is a existing conditions plus just a phase 1 of the development. That was the scenario that just adds the movie theater and the combination restaurant. And then this is 29th Street improvements are included, which include that dual southbound left turn on 29th, or on Fairlawn at 29th. And then also the traffic signal at Fairlawn and 28th Street. And we're really looking at these for, make sure the queues are clearing in 1 cycle or so of the signal. Make sure we can move that through and don't cause congestion between the intersections.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So could you give kind of an example of what we would have seen if there had been an issue with traffic or congestion? What would have, one of the scenarios of, an example or a description of, for the lay person who's not, just looking at this every day and understanding the analysis?
If it wasn't working?
Yeah, what would be, just give us a description of what we would notice up here if something was not working.
What we would see is the queues between intersections get extensive. You start to see some very long backups that don't clear in 1 cycle of the signal. That's typically when we see a level of service E or an F condition, is when we don't see that signal be able to move people through. What we found here is we were able to get them through in these movements. We also looked at, this is more of an interaction and queuing exercise here to make sure this works operationally. We also look at a level of service analysis with our synchro model, which is tied to this as well. And that's where we really calculate the delays. And our delay scores here at each of the individual intersections were in a good threshold.
this question?
That's really what's first.
Madam Chair?
Might be more fun to
Yes, Mr. Armstrong.
How could it be more exciting to track?
I have one
Yes,
traffic.
Mr. Armstrong.
Just one question, sir. With the break-in access option, the 29th Street I-470 westbound ramp connector road, is that dual left, or was that extending the left turn storage to provide left turn into that break-in access one-way in?
With the break-in access?
Yes, with
It's a single left.
single left,
It's
but
a single left, right.
but you were extending the left turn storage for that movement?
We're extending, see, without the break-in access condition, without the break-in access condition is where the dual left is being made eastbound on 29th to head north on Fairlawn. And then we extend that storage, that queue storage, back across the connector road intersection as well with that dual movement. Without that dual movement, or without the break, without a dual movement is the break-in access option, I should say. So that's where we're simply extending the storage of that existing eastbound left turn lane, basically doubling it.
Thanks.
Any questions? Any further questions? Yes.
What's the timing of the break-in access study?
It's a great question. We are hoping that it's within the next 5 months or so. We're not certain how long the Federal Highways Administration will take to review it. Our intent is to, if we receive approval this evening, to work in earnest with KDOT to get it through the KDOT review process and to Federal Highways Administration as soon as possible. KDOT has reviewed it. We have some comments. There are constructive comments that Jeff's going to work on, and we're going to respond to those. And then we think at that point we'll be able to move it to Federal Highways. And again, I just don't know how long Federal Highways will take to review it.
Any further questions for the applicant?
Can I mention one more thing? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Ms. Messina, I wanted to address your comments
Yes.
about the quality of the bike racks.
Sure.
They will be high-quality product, just like everything we're going to do for the site here. I can guarantee you they won't be the cheap, low-grade stuff. That is not the intent for anything we're going to do out here. It's not what Jim wants to bring for this project.
Okay.
Everything that we're going to do is going to be a higher quality.
Always drives me crazy when I bring my expensive bike up to a bike rack and then I'm not sure
I'm a
the bike
cyclist
rack.
as well. I
Okay.
understand. I get it.
Will there be, on that note, if I can add, any like sharrows or any kind of bike signs or anything to attract people coming from the Shunga Trails by bicycle?
From my perspective, that's a site plan review timing consideration. I'm not
Okay.
sure we've thought about what the exact signage or the placement of it will be, but
Okay.
it'll be something we'll consider.
Something will be there? Okay.
Following that question, with the stoplight, that would be at 28th, is that also going to be a pedestrian crossing as well? Or would it be recommended to take that Shunga Trail path?
Yeah, so we'll have a crosswalk for pedestrians.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Question. Has there been any dialogue with the city about the cleanup of the Shunga and the existing trees and debris there may be there? It looks like a lot of your apartments and the hotel looks out at that area. Have you had some discussion?
It's my understanding, and we have our engineer here that can speak to it more completely than I can, but that is in the floodway, and so that we can't approach that and do anything with it. That's outside of our purview. Even if we wanted to do anything with it, we couldn't because it's located within a floodway.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes.
I just have a question. Which direction is the movie theater's entrance?
It is on the west side, I believe. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any question? Yes?
You mentioned the floodway in my packet, and I saw the slide up earlier. There's a particular, if I may, There's a particular diagram that kind of showed the flood zone and the 100-year flood zone and the floodway. I did notice we have two buildings particularly that in part or in whole set within the 100-year flood zone. Are there accommodations that have been taken to address their existence in that area? I didn't hear it be addressed by Mr. Nunebold, so I was wondering kind of what's the scenario there.
Absolutely. We're fully aware of that. That's taken into consideration in our preliminary stormwater report that's before staff. We plan to elevate the site to move it out of the floodplain, the 100-year floodplain. We certainly have met with KDOT, we've met with KSDWR as well, and so obviously there are many parties looking at this and making sure that that'll be addressed, most of which, not the least of which would be Jim. Obviously, he certainly doesn't want to build the buildings in the floodplain, but even with that said, the stopgap is the city, the stopgap is KDOT, the stopgap is Kansas DWR, and all of the requisite permits we need.
Understood. I just was curious as to the particular level of detail or attention, because normally we don't see it in there unless there's some other notation of how it's being counter-addressed with an addition to level of areas being addressed by a subtraction of land over here. So I'm not seeing that on there. I was asking.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
At this time, we will open it up for public testimony. If there is anyone here that would like to address the commissioners. All right. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and move on to discussion by commissioners.
Madam Chairman, I just want to confirm if staff can verify, and if we need to, then maybe the applicant's representative can reconfirm on pages 14 and 15, the 13 items that are stated for consideration as part of the staff recommendation. They have concurred there in agreement with accepting those items, or have proffered an alternative that is under consideration.
They have, it's my understanding that they have accepted these conditions. Yes, Commissioner Gales.
Okay, thanks.
I have a question related to that. Are there too many conditions at this point? Are things, do we need to have a little bit more certainty about some of these items before we make a decision?
Commissioner, staff is satisfied that these conditions, in fact, address questions and issues in the PUD master plan, that we're satisfied that they do correctly, adequately address issues that were identified during the review process.
Mr. Gales?
If I may address Commissioner Ringler, is there one in particular you have concern about as you read through them?
No, I just, from reviewing projects in my day-to-day work, I put conditions on projects sometimes, and sometimes they work out and sometimes they don't. There just seems to be a lot of ifs.
Understood.
And I was wondering if maybe waiting for some of these ifs to become definites would help.
The one thing I noted that I'd say maybe half of these appear to be a grammatical or a correction, and although I observed as you did, there are some that are specifics to
waiting on
changing
studies and things like that. I just thought maybe.
Madam Chairman, would you
Yes.
like a little more clarification on that?
Yes,
A couple
please.
things. So before, if the commission is to make a positive recommendation here, as this goes forward, they would need to correct the master plan, and that would be on a corrected Mylar for future recordation prior to this being scheduled for the city council.
Okay.
So that's one of the steps that might give you some comfort. Also, they have reviewed all of these extensively. A lot of this is, the volume of the conditions looks a little bit daunting, but a lot of that is because it is a PUD, and essentially what you're doing is writing standards for a specific area. It's kind of almost like creating your own zoning district. So it does tend to be extensive. But staff is comfortable that they're going to be able to meet these conditions.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments?
Madam Chairwoman, unless there's other obligations to our review, I'd make a motion.
All right. We
I'd
have,
move for approval with the conditions as noted by staff, items 1 through 13 for approval.
okay.
I would second that motion.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I just want to make a few comments based on the traffic analysis. I mean, this is a highly high traffic area with 3 existing signals already there. My first review of the traffic analysis kind of surprised me based on the Fairlawn I-470 eastbound ramp, but upon determining that the existing condition analysis actually takes into account a project that the city has already in the works to install a traffic signal there to help that intersection. It helped me understand the existing scenario. Kind of looking and comparing both the break-in access versus the non-break-in access. I think they're very similar results from a traffic analysis. Level of service similar, delay similar. I'm actually surprised that the break-in access doesn't operate more efficiently than without. It just seems that for eastbound traffic to be able to turn left into the break-in access point instead of going to 29th and turning left on Fairlawn and then left again into the site, that the break-in access really kind of takes traffic out of the 29th and Fairlawn intersection and gets them out of making 2 movements to essentially reduce it to 1. So I actually think the break-in access would work for that reason, to kind of help the other intersections as well and make it easier for that eastbound left traffic. So just my comments on looking at the traffic, but it seems to all make sense to me. I think that the improvements with the Phase 1 and Phase 2 developments make sense as well.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Madam Chairwoman, on a lighter note, I just want to say I sleep better at night knowing that Brian's got my back on that. So.
I'm glad. Yes.
Madam Chair, there is a request for a public comment at this time. To do that, I would just entertain the commission to see if they can open the public hearing back up.
Is everyone okay with opening the public hearing?
May I inquire as to the premise of the request after the closing of it, Madam Chairwoman?
Yes. Mr. Feinder?
You can. I don't know what the premise will be. So other than I don't know if there was a complete following exactly what was the schedule was.
Madam Chairwoman, since I have the motion that's been seconded, I'll entertain the opening it back up if it's the preference of the commission to do so. So I will suspend my seconded motion in lieu of reopening the hearing for public comments for the individual as noted. So I would move that we open it back up for public comments.
Thank you. Can I hit the gavel? Just kidding. Okay. Thank you very much. Sir, please state your name.
I'm sorry, I was following here, and I thought that was one of the items to come up before you start talking about voting.
That's okay.
Am I wrong?
We did open it up for public discussion. No one came up, so we closed the public hearing.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
That's okay.
Okay. Yes, I'm William G. Haynes, and I own the property at 2830 Farallon Road. It's leased and is the Pizzago restaurant. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. I've owned it for since 1985. And to begin with, there is a left turn coming from the north to the south in front of the store. Been there for longer than I've owned the building. It's important to the success of the building. There is a drive-through window on the north side of the building, and there's no way into that area other than coming north through 29th Street from the Turnpike area. The owner of the restaurant says that if the left turn area is discontinued, as I understood it was proposed in the plan, which I also understood was amended, or has been amended by staff, and was to be placed before you tonight. And apparently that hasn't happened, and I'm not certain why it hasn't. But in any event, I'm asking you to consider that this evening and to ask staff about it and whether or not it's been considered. And moreover, I would not like to be sitting in your seat tonight because I'm concerned about the State Highway Department and the feds. And much of what is being considered here tonight is going to determine the success of the development. And I hope it happens. In other words, I hope the state and the feds decide to accept the plan as proposed. And I'm asking staff and Bill, if you have any knowledge regard to any of the remarks I'm making tonight, I would hope that you would share them with the commission. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Feiender?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I do believe in Mr. Neunenbell's presentation, as well as Mr. Johnson's presentation, that both referred to the median being interrupted between 28th and 29th on Fair Lawns to allow a left turn into the Pizzago's property. So that was commented on at both the applicant and the staff presentation level, and that was confirmed.
Mr. Gales?
Madam Chairwoman, if we could, just so we could make sure visually we're confirming or addressing this. I'm concurring that what Mr. Feinder is correct, but since our documents do not represent the east side of Fairlawn, if I think there was an item in the presentation by the applicant that showed a little more of the property to the east, if we could be indulged by maybe revisiting that, just so we understand exactly the alignment that Mr. Haynes is referring to. Is that a possibility?
Can you still see the
Okay, there we go.
exhibit there?
Yeah.
Right here is the interruption in the median that will allow
Okay.
that left turn to continue into the Pizzago's pad, which is this one right here.
Okay.
And that is after the stoplight, is that correct?
That is south of the 28th and Fairlawn stoplight.
Okay.
And north of the 29th and Fairlawn intersection.
And right now, that
Thank you.
median continues through that point, or it is also, it's open there also at
It's
this
open
time?
now.
Okay.
It's wide, yeah.
It's just there's a right out and a right in at that point.
That's right. We won't be
Correct.
changing the current access for any of the paths east of Fairlawn.
Okay.
Okay.
So then my follow-up question would be, if I may,
Yes.
is Mr. Haynes then, is it more clear to him, Madam Chairwoman, that this break in the median addresses the concern that he raised when he was before us?
Mr. Haynes? Commissioner Gales wants to, if you want to pose that question to him.
Mr. Haynes, so the applicant's representative came up and clarified for us that they have in fact presented the road improvements with the median being modified now so that it is open like it currently is, so that your right in and right out access is continued. Is that, are you more, that's not your
It's not clear to
understanding?
me what he's presenting, but would be much clearer, and what I'm thinking is the median should not be changed there at all.
Okay.
Let me explain further why I'm saying that. Most of you are probably aware that about 5.5 years ago, that area on Fairlawn, close to the 5470 entrance and exits, was made over near the stoplight there on 29th Street. And the store's not far from those lights. That median was there then, it was there 25 years ago, and I'm proposing that it just remains the same as it is.
So can we have clarity here as to if the current median is changed in any way from its
I would like Bill to comment on that, please.
Mr. Viander.
All right, so I think I know what's going on here. So Mr. Haynes, you're referring to a median?
There is a median there.
Okay. Do you mean a turn lane?
Yes.
Okay.
No, there's a median there. I'd have to go back and, I'm not sure about that, but I just leave everything right in front of the store the way it is, so far as the traffic flow.
If I might interject, having had an office down in that area for 13 years before we moved downtown, I was there while the intersection was modified, and the median that is north of 29th Street went about as far as the just past the north entrance into the gas station, but it stopped before it got to the right-in intersection for that was how you entered the Pazagles property. So I think what we're simply clarifying is that existing median that was installed as part of the improvements 8 or 10 years ago, is it staying in its current distance from 29th, or is it incrementally moving any further north? And we just want to clarify on behalf of Mr. Haynes, is that no longer being projected northward, it is being left open? I think that's the clarity.
I'm going to ask City Traffic Engineer, Mr. Terry Coder, to address that important distinction.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Terry Coder, City Traffic Engineer. The median in question, if you look at the illustration that's currently up on the screen, you see there's the bottom box on the right-hand side. It says construct the second southbound left turn lane. You'll see the median on the right side of that, on the driver's left. That median is essentially in the same place as the existing median. And as Mr. Gale says, it just goes past the existing Phillips 66 entrance just a little bit. And then the next entrance to the north is
Terry, can I have you speak closer into the mic?
Then the next entrance to the north is the entrance to Mr. Haynes's property. And you'll see that the median shown there, there's a median opening right there, which provides for a left turn and into that site and a left turn out of that site, and the access to that site is unchanged.
So his is totally open to the
right. We provided a median break
traffic.
there.
Southbound.
Great.
A median break there is proposed for that property.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That clarifies it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you. So, do I I need to go back now to open it if there's any other one that needs the public.
So I would move we close the public hearing at this
Okay.
time.
Second.
Thank you. So we've closed the public hearing. Do you want to entertain your motion?
Madam Chairman, I have a standing motion that's been seconded by Mr. Haw, and I have not elected to alter my motion.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Welcome.
Thank you. Apologize for my tardiness. I had a good excuse.
Well, with that, Chris, if you would like to take the vote, please.
Mr. Armstrong.
Aye.
Ms. Messina.
Aye.
Ms. Cavazos.
Aye.
Mr. Gales.
Aye.
Mr. Hall.
Aye.
Ms. Jordan.
Aye.
Ms. Ringler.
Aye.
And Mr. Woods.
May I ask a question of the chair? I apologize, it's out of order, but I was going to ask if we could have the motion restated just so I could hear it.
May I
Apologize.
May I offer, and not to exclude Mr. Woods, but since he's missed
I'm happy
the hearing,
to abstain.
but would it be in his best interest to abstain at this point since his vote would not call in question the approval?
Yes. Yes.
Sure.
Is that okay with you?
Sure, yes.
Great.
I abstain.
And motion passes 7-0 with one abstaining.
Thank you. We'll get you all cut up now.
Yeah, may I hear the, may I ask
Yes.
Madam Chair, just to hear the motion restated so I can write it?
Mr. Gales, would you like to
Sure,
restate your
I
motion?
move for approval of the item, and I asked that the motion include all 13, the item as stated obviously by staff, and that all 13 of the items that are listed as part of the recommendations be considered in the approval of the motion. So,
Thank you.
and it was seconded by Mr. Haw.
Thank you. Moving on to item 2A, correct? The Wheatfield Village Project Plan. Is that you, Mr. Feinberg?
Yes, I will start, Madam Chair, on that, and try to keep this as simple as possible. So you just reviewed in quite extensive proposal for a land use change at this site. As part of this development, the developer is also proposing a tax increment finance district to help with incentives to complete the project. They have already gone before City Council, governing body, to establish the boundaries for the district. And that was on June 26th. And so one of the next steps, or the next step before they go back to the governing body and hold a public hearing to have the plan for the TIF district approved, they have to come before you by state law to have you find that their project plan is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan, which is our land use and growth management plan. So basically, the land uses that were in the PUD that you just approved or recommended for approval are synonymous with their project plan. The project plan was handed out tonight. It's the most recent draft. And if you flip through that a little bit, you would see that most of it is actually incentive-laden language and conditions and analysis that that has no bearing on the finding that state law requires for the consistency with the comp plan. So my job is to focus you on the, I believe it's really page 2 of the project plan, and I'll just restate basically what the redevelopment project includes, which is the same land uses that were in the PUD: a residential component, the 178 apartment complex, 178 units, a 9-screen movie theater, 690 seats, a 4-story, 88-room hotel, 2 restaurant buildings, and a family dining restaurant as well, and coffee shop. And then, of course, the related costs that go into the development with the site preparation and infrastructure. So, as you can see, that's really what I wanted you to see and focus on. The rest of it is really not germane to the finding that you would need to make. We have attached that being said, we have attached a memo from myself indicating why and how it is consistent with our land use and growth management plan. And then we also attached a resolution, and I apologize if any of this is out of order, but it would basically be page 4 of the handout. After the 3-page staff memo. And the resolution would be that the proposed Wheatfield Village redevelopment project plan is consistent with the land use and growth management plan. If you have any questions about what you're doing or why we're doing this, this would be a good time.
Commissioners, questions?
Madam Chairwoman?
Yes.
If I may ask a question of staff. So for clarity here, the site was zone C4. We've simply created a PUD with C4 zoning overlay. While we've added these particular uses that are occurring within it, I mean, technically in the PUD in a commercial environment, we're talking about a mixed use, a kind of a new urbanism style of development. It was already commercial site with kind of an old, 60s or 70s way of developing site. What we're really doing is kind of using modern development principles that are kind of more best practices is what I would say. But within that PUD and the C4, there's really nothing unusual about what's been proffered as the proposed developed uses. So I guess I'm not sure really if there would be anything that would be of concern in what's being included in this. So, I mean, is there anything out of ordinary as to what you would see in a normal PUD development in a commercial zone that's meant for mixed-use development, where you got work, live, and play as part of the environment?
Commissioner Gales, no, as I said, I don't want to overcomplicate this. Our land use plan for this specific piece of property does recommend large commercial node for the community, but that does not preclude, in the plan, it also encourages mixed-use development at those nodes, not to exclude them. So that and reinvesting in an area such as this, where our services are, and redeveloping an infill site is absolutely consistent with our plan. So I don't want to make, no, there is no concern here from staff, and nor should there be. What you see is what you see.
If anything, the developer should be commended that they're even working on a density overlay that with close proximity to traffic, which is exactly the development principles we're looking for in an urban, this isn't an urban infill, but technically it's it was suburban 40, 50 years ago. Now it's urban Topeka almost, but it's exactly the type of dense commercial mixed-use development you're looking for on a site like this. So
Yep, absolutely. Yep, through major arterials, interstate, we want some density here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So, first of all, I want to thank you for, I got a chance to look at this. I'd like to say I looked at it before this morning. But I did look at it. I had one question. I didn't see this covered in any of the information. I don't see it in the memo that's attached. I'm just curious if there is any kind of fiscal note or estimate for the exact amount of dollars in terms of TIF funds. I know that work was done in the feasibility study.
Commissioner Woods, the draft that you have before you, we handed this out before the meeting, so I'm making sure you're Is that what
Yes.
you're, okay.
Right.
So if you look in the body of the document, you will see more analysis of those costs, really.
So this is actually the cost. I just wanted to make sure I knew what I was looking at.
Exactly. So that, at this point in time, that's the best estimates for costs that they have proposed to the city.
And as I see in the memo, it is stated that they are confident that actual revenue is expected to exceed or equal the cost of implementing the redevelopment project plan. So,
Do you mind if I
yes, sir.
respond and hopefully answer your questions for
Yes,
you? Plan is in draft form right now. We are working with the city's financing staff, and we'll be taking through the city council process the economic development incentive side of the consideration. The statute specifically and just merely states that the planning commission determines the conformance of the land use.
That's correct.
With the comp plan. So the financing side is still in consideration and still being discussed and negotiated with the staff and with the city council. So that's in draft form, just to answer your question directly.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, I just was curious. So it's not in our purview right now,
Correct.
but
Yep.
just as a Topekan and somebody who lives
Sure.
around there, and I was curious what the actual dollar figure would be. That spoken, I still definitely agree with Commissioner Gales. I think this is a good thing. It's good that it's happening where it's happening. I'm happy as a Topekan to see it's happening within our land use and growth management plan, and not somewhere further out where I'd be complaining about it. So thank you for for your work.
Any further questions?
Council, Madam Chairwoman, I'm going to get it right.
That's okay. We're almost
If I
done.
could just, not at the risk of just hearing myself speak, if I could just add to what Commissioner Woods is saying, is I think the core thing here is whether their intent is to go after TIF or not, is as commissioners, this what we want to see with, and if we want to confer upon our blessing that it meets the land use growth management plan, regardless of whether or not they follow through with their TIF or, and that they may be back before us. I think we have an obligation to make sure that we agree, we concur, regardless of whatever money that might be dangled in front of us. Is this appropriate? I would add, I think it is, and I think I'm glad that that's happening. I hope that their TIF stuff comes together, because clearly those are numbers that have an impact in the community. And I think there's concentric benefits to this whole part of Topeka, and as well as it has a nice appealing context as you're driving by on the interstate, as opposed to some overgrown lot. So all that being said, I would hope my fellow commissioners look at the land use growth management plan and say, yes, this falls in line with it. So.
Anyone else? So, Mr. Finder, at this time, do we need to entertain a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair. You do?
Okay.
Would you like me to help you?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So,
Madam Chair, I'd make the motion.
all right, thank you, Commissioner Armstrong.
Planning Commission find that the proposed Wheatfield Village redevelopment project plan consistent with the Land Use and Growth Management Plan 2040.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Gales. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, we will go to a vote.
Mr. Woods?
Aye.
Ms. Ringler?
Aye.
Ms. Jordan?
Aye.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Mr. Gale?
Aye.
Ms. Cavazos?
Aye.
Ms. Messina?
Aye.
And Mr. Armstrong?
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
All right. With that being the last item, is that correct, Mr. Finder?
That is correct.
All right. Do
I move we adjourn,
have a
Madam
motion?
Chairwoman.
Second. Thank you.
Gavelous.
I want to do this. I've seen Parks and Rec. Adjourned.
Love it.
Good job.
Thank